Earlier this year, despite being released nearly half a decade ago, Brass Birmingham became Board Game Geek's #1 ranked game of all time, which is a big deal. That's like being IMDb's #1 film of all time. So, naturally, now I have to compare it to... If you are familiar with both, then you know I'm reaching so far I can't even see my own hand. One of these games is about coal mining and the relentless rise of industrialism, and the other one's called Brass Birmingham. You know what I mean, they're nothing alike. One's a board game, the other's a video game. One's bleak, one's cheerful. One's a super thinky efficiency simulator, the other's an open world action extravaganza. But they do have one design element in common. Very minor early game spoilers for Tears of the Kingdom coming, you've been warned. So, there's a new mechanism in Zelda, and that mechanism is to make Tears of the Kingdom into sort of a Legoland. Any object you can manipulate in the game, you can now glue to another object. Look, it's a soup ladle! Or is it? You're just not thinking rocket enough. Now we're cooking with gas. And that's fun. But what does that have to do with coal mining in Dudley? Keep your soup ladle on, I'm getting there. To facilitate this construction mechanism, Tears of the Kingdom introduces mechanical items. There's fans, steering wheels, regular wheels, Tonka wheels, sleds, hot air balloons, lasers, you name it. There are also 3 layers to Zelda's map. The regular Hyrule layer, the underground, and the Skylands. Each are distinct biomes, but each also serve a distinct gameplay purpose. Hyrule is where the majority of the game happens and where you'll most use these contraptions. However, to get these parts, you'll need to go above to the Skylands, where you can drop resources into a giant gumball machine, and that's more satisfying than it has any right to be. But to get these resources which let you use the gumball machine, you'll need to go to the underground layer, where Zonite deposits can be mined and then also traded for experience points, which extend the use of powered devices. The underground is also tainted with gloom, a substance that saps your life force, which can be healed by visiting the Hyrule layer again, putting you right back where it started. Most importantly, each of these areas has enough design attention to make them feel interesting. You don't go to the underground to mine the zoanite, that would feel frustrating. You go to the underground because it's fun to explore, plus you'll get the zoanite if you do. In short, the reason to do anything in Zelda is because it's fun, but it's also got mechanical incentives to keep changing biomes baked into the system, so you keep alternating locales. And that's where you probably say, Efka, you're gonna tell me that's exactly what Brass Birmingham does, and you would be right. Except you would also be wrong. Here's the thing, if you played a modicum of modern board games, you'd know that this is a design trope often employed by Eurogames. They are efficiency puzzles, often designed by making distinct mechanical ideas and then connecting them in an interdependent system. Brass Birmingham does this too. Your goal is to dominate the English Industrial Revolution by building industries. In this case, cotton mills, manufactured goods, and pottery. But building them alone accrues no profit or victory points. You also have to establish trade routes, meaning you dig canals and later lay rail track to shipping ports, except to ship those goods through the canals and rail tracks to the ports, you need beer, and you can't just get 4 cans of Foster's from the Premier, you need to make the beer yourself. You need to build a beer industry, all of which costs money, and the best way to get more money is to build coal and iron industries, which take up valuable action time and don't provide you with enough victory points. So if you want to win, you need to build the industries that do grant you a lot of victory points, which are cotton mills, manufactured goods, and pottery. Full circle. But remember, Zelda is a bright, cheery, positive game where every step you take opens into many other different possible steps. No path is wrong, and every path leads you to more paths. In Brass, every step is a disaster of your own making. It's like a simulation of you building a trap door in your living room and then forgetting that you've built that trap door and then falling right through it. Let's take a look at a typical first turn in Brass. Imagine you are the first player. The map is wide open, do what you like, except every turn spent in brass not improving your economy sends you further into a debt spiral. And believe it or not, you don't want that. You want to sell industries, which, as I've mentioned, requires beer. Well, good news, your first selling comes with a complimentary beer voucher. You just need to be the first one to do it. But what can go wrong? You're the starting player. You've got the advantage. Here's some immediate problems. Unlike in all future turns, where you get 2 actions every turn, on your first turn, you only get 1 action. And you could very easily just drop an industry in Birmingham, because everyone builds industries in Birmingham early on, because it's easy access to sell locations, and also everyone builds this canal link, because it's guaranteed points, but it'll also allow you to sell this industry. Nice! We've built some manufactured goods, we're gonna rake in the dough. There's just one problem. Every other player that takes a turn after you builds canal links around Birmingham. And on the second turn, turn order is determined by who spent the least money. Building a canal link costs $3. Building a manufacturing plant costs $8 plus 1 extra buck for the coal you need for it. So next turn, you're going last. And everyone has 2 actions, which means every other player has the potential to build an industry and sell it before you do, using up the free beer. Meanwhile, you've spent more than half your money and you're on your way into debt. Nice! So you think, nah, I'm gonna build a canal link instead. That way, I get points for it doing scoring, spend the least or tie least, and still go first the next turn, and then I get 2 actions, I can be the first to build my industry and sell it. And then you watch every other player build up all the relevant industry spots in Birmingham, leaving you no room. Guess what? In this scenario, they will also get to sell before you do, and this deepening sensation of doom compounds every single round of the game and never lets up. Not once. Anyone who's played brass even once will recognize the appeal of this, the sense of immediately getting lost and then being motivated by this entrapment. You will claw through every inch of space on this board, and you could easily say, yeah, that's probably why it's BGG's #1 game. But I would like you to ask yourself, what does it mean to be BGG's #1 game? There are certain assumptions baked into that, like, are the metrics like that even relevant? Do they actually represent a majority? And all of that is valid, but let's just put that aside for a second and take this #1 at face value. BGG's audience is established, entrenched, primarily interested in mechanical aspects, but it is also segmented. The website is large enough to form disparate groups, circles, and cliques. What unifies everyone to agree that yes, this is indeed a great game? I'd like to invite you to a bit of a pivot. Here's the thing about this map. I live here. I live in one of these places. 3 years ago, me and Elaine moved to Nottingham, a place I'd only been to twice before in my life and knew a little bit marginally more than most people in the world. Robin Hood, Sherwood Forest, Nottingham Forest Football Club. That's it. Fun fact, Tony Robinson of Baldrick and Time Team fame once did a documentary on Robin Hood, which you can watch yourself on the website youtube.com. Turns out, in real life, the people that could have been Robin Hood had very little to do with Nottingham, but don't tell any of my neighbours I said that, they don't like it when I bring it up. The very real Nottingham is quite different. On the one hand, yeah, there's a lot of forests here, and they are just absolutely brilliant, but there's also a lot of dereliction. Whole suburbs giving way to waste, like people forgot the joys of living and now just sort of exist. And this waste is in constant conflict with the community spirit that remains. It's a stark mix of optimism in an eternal battle with despondency. In the late 80s, Margaret Thatcher closed down all those coal mines you're building in brass Birmingham, and it's created a very real and very present rift. One of my favourite places in Nottingham is Bestwood Country Park. It's just a great scenic walk, but it's also the place of a past coal mine and a past iron foundry, both of which are now closed, although sometime before Thatcher, which has given an opportunity for all of this to flourish. It's easy to see nature and be like, well, this is obviously better than mining coal, but this entire village exists because of coal and iron. Coal and iron was the identity of this village. What happens to a community when you take away what they build their lives around? If I enter Bestwood Country Park through the north entrance, I'm in the constituency of Sherwood, which is a Tory constituency. If I enter Bestwood Country Park through the south, I'm in the constituency of Nottingham North, which is a Labour constituency. What happens is a rift, not for the people who built everything, but for the people who inhabit this landscape. They act, but each action sends them further down this rift. They are not in control. The issues I present are really beyond the remit of this video, and if you want a dramatized explanation of what I'm talking about, I suggest watching Sherwood, which depicts the reverberations and tensions this has caused that affect the people of Nottingham to this very day, pitted against each other rather than united in that community spirit. I wanted to contextualize this because Brass Birmingham isn't just bleak in artwork, it depicts the seed of what Britain faces today, why everyone can't agree on anything. Yet, you're not playing as the people who reap the fruits of that seed, you're playing the people who sowed it. It is therefore quite peculiar to me that Brass Birmingham, and by extension its predecessor Brass Lancashire, engender this feeling of entrapment. Every turn you are constricted further and further into bad options. Your only motivating force is profit, and your only chance of survival is to Adam Sandler yourself into some uncut gem. It is relentless. I say peculiar because it is hard to know how much the mechanisms reflect intention. Brass Birmingham was designed by Gavin Brown and Matt Tolman, who based their design off of Martin Wallace's Brass Lancashire, which at the time was only known as Brass. The big marketing push at the release of this second edition was that they based their design off of data that analyzed a lot of online plays of Brass, which was already a game that was known to be mathematically robust, survived a lot of plays, and remained a hard nut to crack when competing against experienced fellow brasseurs. I think many will argue that it is precisely this longevity that pushed Brass into the #1 spot, and I won't even try to debate that. To many Brass fans, that is probably the thing that matters. But to me, despite you playing what history has shown to be an incredibly destructive force, the play experience of Brass has a truth to it, intended or not. And by the way, I'm not excusing this framing, it's just not the scope or point of this video. If you'd like more historical background on Brass Birmingham, Elaine did a really cool exploration of that in her board game biographies video, thumbnail link at the very end. So, to bring it back full circle to Zelda, which I know many of you are still scratching your heads about, I think it's incredible how two drastically different games can share a core design element, like players being constantly encouraged to travel from system to system, fully exploring the design space. What makes both of them great, however, isn't that the people who worked on these games used clever game design, it's that they understood that this element needs to be informed by the tones and motifs the games are trading in. Then they feel true to themselves. Brass Lancashire is still better though. Sapao!